Go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to be here with my dear friend KG. We've known each other for a really long time. And in fact, we were trying to figure out the last time we connected. And actually, when was the first time we connected? It's been so long. It's been over a decade. And I used to do her YouTube shows. And I think she had several of them. And I know I was on at least one of them several times. Anyway, it was so great. So she used to interview me and t ask me to talk about things that were going on. And so now I'm here to I don't know, we're not really interview. We're having a conversation, and it's so fun to do this with you, KG. It's been so long. And one of the things we're gonna talk about today is the difference between the seasonal signs and the constellations and how they're both important, not one more important than the other, or one less important than the other. And we're going to also talk about a few other things that are going on in terms of the high magic of the astrological alignments that are taking place right now. And KG has written a book on a, like a survival astrology survival guide, I think it's
Yes.
called. Yeah. And they feature the seasonal signs as the sun moves into the different seasons, or also what we would call like Pisces, Aries, Taurus. We call those the seasonal signs. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to you so you can tell us a little bit more about your book, and then we can dive into the difference between the signs and the constellations.
Yes. Well, you can actually use each of the signs for any of your, you could apply them to any of of any of the planets. You could use them with Mercury or Venus or Mars. It would explain how your Mars is operating, that sort of thing. There's also a little bit about the basics of astrology with some of the aspects, the meaning of the aspects. So you can really use it to help you navigate some of the cycles we go through. But there are also one of the important things is that you can engage with the astrology through the new and full moon meditations that are in the guide. It also gives you the essential oils, the aromatherapy, and the crystals and gemstones to use that can really empower you through the different cycles you experience in your life. So it's multifaceted the way that it can be applied in your life.
I love that.
Um, so yes, I really want clarity for people to have more clarity about how the signs and the constellations work together. And I think you have a strong passion for uniting both, using the signs and constellations again, not keeping them separate. They became separate so that people either use the Western zodiacal system or they refer to the sidereal Vedic system as the one that's happening. Well, they're both happening. And so, could you explain more about that? I know you're really good at this, so.
Oh, thank you, KG. Thank you so much. And just a note to say that if you want to get KG's book, there will be a link in the show notes to so you can go find that. Because I love that you're doing crystals and aromatherapy, essential oils, and also the meditations and things like that, so people can have a more direct experience with them themselves, because that's what this is all about. It's not about going to an astrologer and having them tell you what you're experiencing. It's really how are we, we're informing the mysteries as much as they're informing us. And so how are we understanding what's going on? And then how are we being informed by that? And then how are we helping to inform that? Because it's a living relationship that got lost for the most part and is now getting reclaimed again. Yay for that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly. People really need to take responsibility for how they're experiencing life and taking control and directing how their life unfolds. So yeah.
I feel like your book such a great guide for people who are ready for that experience, and with giving them some great tools so that they can do that. And then the other part of it is how we go out and listen and connect with the stars ourselves and get our own direct downloads, and not depend on others to tell us. Sometimes we can get inspired by what others are telling us, but and hopefully we're going to inspire you today. And here's the thing. The seasonal signs represented by equinoxes and solstices and cross quarter points, the sun when it enters 0 degrees Aries is in the seasonal sign of Aries for 30 days. Now, it is not in the constellation of the Ram, also known as Aries. It has been in the constellation of the Fish for the last 2000 some years. And it's going to be in the head of the Fish, is where the sun rises currently at the equinox for a while longer. And there's different ways that you can divide up the sky and figure out, divide up the constellations, and every culture has had their way of doing that. So, but when I look at the star map, I'm like, it's still in the Fish, just saying. And the Fish, also known as Pisces. Here's what happened. Um, a long time ago, they forgot that there was a difference between the seasonal signs and the constellations, because these seasonal signs are moving backward through the constellations 1 degree every 72 years. So it takes a lifetime or more for it to move 1 degree. So, when they named them the same name, then they forgot there was a difference. And now the precession has happened, and it's been a couple thousand years since that. So it's almost moved through a whole, well, some constellations are smaller, some are bigger. So the constellation of the Ram is now completely overlaid by the seasonal sign of Taurus. And the constellation of the Fish is almost completely overlaid by the seasonal sign of Aries. And the constellation of the Water Bear is completely overlaid by the constellation, by the seasonal sign of Pisces. So it's just shifted that much since the forgetting happened. And so sidereal astrologers will say tropical astrologers don't know what they're talking about, because the planet is in this constellation and it should be called, like say it's in Aries, it should be called, it's in the seasonal sign of Aries, it should be called Pisces. So confusing. So not Dane Rajar, I'm sorry, Rudolf Steiner, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, came up with a way to distinguish them so that we are not so confused. And it's brilliant, because basically taking the name of the signs, the seasonal signs like Aries, Pisces, and because astrologers and astronomers agree that 0 Aries is the spring equinox point, 0 Cancer is the summer solstice point, talking about northern hemisphere opposite seasons and the southern hemisphere, that these points are the seasonal points, that it makes sense to use a different name for the constellations so we don't get confused. And how are they working together? How are these two things that each have their own essence and energy working together? And if we can bring them back together in our awareness, then we are reweaving a sense of wholeness in our being. Because if we look at how they got split, this understanding got split, then what we realize is that we're living in a fractured consciousness of thinking the constellations, there's one way of looking at them, but they're named the same name as the seasonal signs, but the seasonal signs are not in those constellations during those seasons. So then it gets super confusing. And it takes a while to really get this. I mean, sometimes you have to hear this more than once to get this idea. So, for example, I'm a Pisces sun seasonally, but the sun was in the constellation of the Water Bear when I was born, also known as Aquarius. So sidereal astrologers would say I was an Aquarius sun, but that doesn't, it's like then you're not getting the essence of Pisces included in that constellational energy, which is, has been associated with Aquarius for a long time. So this is our opportunity, is to see how can we bring the two back together, not one being better than the other, not one being more important than the other, but they're both important, and there's a weaving that we can do to connect this understanding. And in fact, I've done a whole class with Eric Roth and My Star Alchemy on how we take where the constellations, the seasonal signs are in the constellations now, and look at how that we can weave those energies together, which is kind of fun. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well.
Yes, I think a lot of people are confused about when we say Pluto has moved into Aquarius by sign, and sidereal astrologers say that no, 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 that's wrong. It's just moved into the sea goat, into Capricorn. So I think that both are happening, and that there's not one is right and the other wrong. It doesn't work that way.
They're both right because seasonally, the sun, or, when we have the seasonal experience of Aquarius, when the sun is in Aquarius, it's just entering into the sea goat, also known as Capricornus, also known as Capricorn, and goes through that constellation and then goes into to Pisces into the constellation of the water bear. So it's like how these seasonal signs are moving through these constellations. So Pluto just entered the seasonal sign of Aquarius. That is true. And it's also entering the constellation also known as Capricorn or Capricornus. But if we call it the sea goat, then we can separate the understanding. So the two things are working together. And if we think about Aquarius and its revolutionary energy, and Capricorn as how it's really about building new ways of being that are sustainable and it's like earth and grounded and practical. It's like, how are those two things working together? And it's
Yes,
going to be there for 20 years working on that. So we might see some crazy wild things because it's Aquarius, the seasonal sign of Aquarius, but it's also going to have an impact in terms of maybe we can create sustainable structures that'll last for the future.
exactly. Exactly. So I think there's a little bit of insight there you've given us uh, about how to work with these energies in a practical way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and there's more to be discovered and to unfold and for us to tune into. So when we go outside and sit with the stars and sit with the moon as it's passing through different constellations, because it does that very quickly. Like every 2.5 days, it's changing seasonal signs, but it's also moving through constellations pretty fast. That's a great way to start tuning in and just receiving the downloads of information that are available to us. I just saw something that was a quote or something about an indigenous culture, I think in Africa, and there was some archaeologist or somebody who was like connecting with this tribe, and they were asking him about what he heard from the stars, and he said, "I don't hear the stars." And they were saying, "Wait, you don't hear the stars? They're always talking. How can you not hear them?" They were so surprised. And then they were like, "It's like you're not really alive if you're not hearing the stars." So what that tells me, it's not that we're not really alive, but that we have lost a part of our aliveness in connection to how do we open our awareness to being really able to hear what the stars have to tell us, and the planets as well, and whatever else is going on in the cosmos. So,
And our place in the whole scheme of things
yeah,
as
absolutely.
individuals as well as humanity.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
I love that.
and I wanted to cover a little bit about the eclipses that are happening. I know the 0 degree Aries point is going to be very active this year. So you want to have a little bit of a dialogue about what is going on. There's so much going on right now.
Right.
So there is a lineup of planets happening the 1st of March with all the planets right before they move across that threshold. Of course, Venus already moved across that 0 degree Aries point earlier. So
Yeah.
is she the first planet across there?
I think so. Let me just, I wrote down the dates. February 1st, she crossed that point. March 27 and April 30th are the three times she crosses zero Aries. Now, the thing about zero Aries that's so important is it marks the balance of day and night. So that's what the equinox is, equal day and night. That's what that's about. And the March equinox is spectacular in that it's a time that they have noticed there are what are called equinox cracks in the magnetosphere of the Earth and the geomagnetic field of the Earth. So more light comes in from the solar radiation, and there'll tend to be more auroras around that time. They've also found that it's a time when it heightened intuition and ability to connect to other realms and dimensions. And ancient cultures knew this, and that's why they did big equinox ceremonies. So to
Like
have,
about a 24-hour window before and after,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's the height of it when the sun is there. But then when you have planets crossing this point, and they can be there a lot longer, like Neptune's going to cross there on March 30th for the first time in 165 years. Saturn will be in May for the first time in almost 30 years. They'll come together and they're going to hang out kind of at that 0 point. They don't make an exact conjunction until February of 2026 at the 0 Aries point. And that hasn't happened in over 12,000 years. So this 0 Aries point, I think of it like an equinox portal. Like there's a portal of energy we experience every year, but this year it's magnified in ways that in 2025, it's magnified in ways that we haven't seen maybe in many, many lifetimes, not just our lifetime or, the next few lifetimes to come. It's just one of these magical portals that's happening. And not only that, as you said, equinox, eclipses, keyword, eclipses. So starting on March 14th, we have a total solar eclipse going across the US. And then on the 29th of March, we have a partial solar eclipse, which is surrounding the equinox. So there's an eclipse portal happening as there's an equinox portal. And then we have all these planets activating the equinox portal 3 times. Mercury, Venus, Neptune, and Saturn are going to activate that 0 Aries point 3 times over the weeks and months
What
following.
do you think that is mostly saying? To me, that is a individuation point. It's all about the individual beginning to wake up. I feel like we've gone through the Pisces drama of delusion, mass hypnosis, psychosis, and people coming out of that. It's like, is that going to be like, I mean, because it's a fiery sign. What kind of big awakening?
Right?
It just seems like there's an awakening to your individuality and that you have a say in how things go.
So we could say how the one are the many and the many are the one, that individual aspect, but we're all interconnected. And if we think about the 29-degree Pisces point, which is it's the omega point, like the end of the seasonal cycle. So the sun's always going to be at 29 Pisces before it goes into 0 Aries. So there's that alpha omega
Mhm.
dance that's happening. And then there's all these planets activating the alpha omega piece. And so the beginning and the end, what are we beginning? What's the new thing? What are the things that are ending? And what are the, and I like what you said. I think it's an awakening. And how are we as individuals waking up to who we really are? And how are we waking up collectively to who we really are? So I feel like it's a massive opportunity for a quantum leap,
Yes,
a
yes.
quantum leap, a quantum leap.
And
And
people can take advantage of this as an opportunity to step into a whole new paradigm
yeah.
for yourself as an individual as well as for humanity.
So what I'm loving and thinking about now, KG, is that your book will have meditations and what oils and what crystals and what things to use and to connect with for the 0 Aries point being activated so many times this year. And so that could be a great guide for people to connect with if they don't have already practices that they know how to do, or that, if they need that kind of guidance on
Yes, and
that.
it helps them what you were talking about earlier about connecting with the planets and the stars and how they are informing you and what they're saying to you. It's a practical way for really being able to access that information and get it active within you.
Yeah, sometimes we just need a starting place. And it can be really helpful to have that. So, yeah, I'm very excited about this equinox portal, um, eclipse portal, and Venus stationing retrograde in Aries March 1st, and then Mercury on March 14th or 13th, 14th. The eclipse is the
Well, it's very late in the evening in the Pacific,
yeah,
so it's mostly it's happening on the 14th.
yeah. Exactly. And that's the day that Mercury's stationing retrograde. Also in Aries, very close to Venus and Mercury are just hanging out. And I went back and looked this up, and it's like Mercury will repeat a retrograde cycle about every 46 years at the near the same degree on the near the same day, about every 46 years. Venus will do that about in the way that it's doing it every 251 years. So this is like super rare. And I already mentioned how Neptune going into Aries for the first time in 165 years. So again, we're looking at something that maybe hasn't ever happened that in any recent memory, in any ancestral memory that we have of written, anything that's been written. It's like we've never seen anything like this. It's so amazing. And
A vast opportunity.
yes, yeah, yeah.
So, do you want to speak more on things or you want to close things up? I know we have Mars finally stationing direct on the 23rd of February, which I think is very significant. It really has played a key role in a lot of things that too much to maybe mention. But I think we'll have some significators beginning to, we'll get some signifiers about how things are going because it's really the directive. How are things moving forward? So we'll begin to see things coalesce. Do you see that as the potential for Mars as it moves forward? That we'll get more clarity?
Uh, well, and then Venus goes retrograde, and then Mercury goes retrograde, and
That's true.
I
It's
don't
going to
know that.
be a little bit back and forth, no
Yeah.
doubt.
But the other thing is that I don't necessarily see retrogrades as a time when we don't have clarity. I think retrogrades are a time when we can go deeper. And actually, any planet retrograde is closest to the Earth, brightest, and most astounding to see. I don't know if people have been seeing Mars in the night sky, but it is so incredible right now. And it is making a triangle with Castor and Pollux, the two stars of the twins. Even though it's in the sign of Cancer, it's in the constellation of the twins, and it's making this beautiful triangle. And so it's what I feel is happening is that it's an opportunity for us to, oh, and the other thing is Mars has been out of bounds, like almost since
Yes.
it went retrograde. So any out of bounds planets, meaning it's outside the boundaries of where the sun can rise and set on the horizon. It's going outside those boundaries, so it's beyond ordinary reality. It becomes a wild card factor. And then it was opposite the sun in January, and so we could say visually it was closest to the earth, rising as the sun was setting. It's still doing that fairly closely, but it's pretty stunning of what's happening in terms of what you can see and what you can tune into. And so I recommend, if you have clear skies, go out and sit with Mars up and coming up in the east after the sun is set, and or already up in the east after the sun is set, and tuning in because Mars is in the seasonal sign of Cancer, as I mentioned, that has to do with how are we creating society in a way that is safe for everybody, not just the elite, not just the people in charge, not just those who have the military power or police power or whatever it is, but how are we doing it in a way that creates a safe space for people to be who they are? And in patriarchal culture, that has not been possible. Men can't be who they are, women can't be who they are, people can't be who they are in the way that it's been. And so what is Mars initiating for us around how can we show up and create a safe space for us to be ourselves and for others to be themselves? And then that will change the world. So I feel I'm very excited about this Mars retrograde. It's outside of the.
I think it's brought up a lot of things, but it's been internal.
Yeah,
So now we'll begin to see, and maybe the word initiation is more the right word, how things will be more, although there will be, with Venus going stationing retrograde, I think there will be, we're going to be, but hold on, wait a minute, before, it's probably going to be more like into May, June, when Jupiter moves into
Cancer.
Cancer. I
Mhm.
think, the two halves of the year are so different. The
Yeah.
first part of the year is so different from the second part.
And
So,
Mars stays out of bounds until April. I think it's April 6th or 7th that comes back into the boundaries of the sun. So it's in that wild card place until then. So even so as it's stationing direct, it's still a wild card. And and then I love that you said Jupiter going into Cancer because that's kind of I mean that's where Mars has been hanging out since it actually entered Cancer, I think, in September, and then it went retrograde in Leo, and then came back into Cancer, and then it's going to go stay in Cancer for quite a while after it goes direct, and so it's been in this area of the sky for quite some time. And Mars is the least often retrograde. It goes retrograde every two
Two and a
years
half years, something like that.
2 months sometimes, 2 years sometimes. It varies a little bit, but and Jupiter can only be in Cancer every 12 or 11 and a half if you want to be more precise. But so the fact that these two things are happening together
And
feels,
there are a lot of planets for the US that are in Cancer,
yes.
which I think that could be a good that's very much more about the family and home and
Yeah, and creating
yeah.
safe
Yes.
community. And so whether that's a more global community or a more local community, but how do we create a greater safety and supportive? Like I like to think about how are we safe? How are we supported? How are we being accepted and valued for who we are? And I think Cancer wants to answer that question. And it
Yes.
has not been, I mean, the way that it's played out has not been, it's not been an answer to that question. And
Also, usually when a planet's the sign before it goes into a sign, for my understanding, it can be, it's like having something moving behind your back. It can feel uncomfortable. So I think it's created some discomfort for Cancer, and the things associated with Cancer.
right. Well, and if we think about Leo, where it started, all of this, being a sign that when it's healthy is about self-love, self-acceptance, self-approval, self-respect. And when we have that for ourselves, then we have that for others. And so if we have a healthy relationship to that, then the Cancer mysteries are easy because then we can easily create that for ourselves and for each other. But if we don't have that, and what we tend to see, if we've been seeing, is a lot of narcissism, and it's about me, and I only care about me.
That's the dark negative side of
Yeah,
expression of
yeah,
Leo.
yeah, exactly. And then so it doesn't feel safe, and it doesn't feel supportive. And so that's like what's been kind of sneaking. So that shadow needs to come to light, so it can be transmuted and transformed, so we can have the healthier expression of it. Yeah, I,
Well, is there anything else you wanted to feel like
I
we covered a lot
we covered a
of
lot.
territory?
We've covered a lot. This has been really fun to do this with you again, KG. If there's anything else you want to say, to maybe talk a little bit about how people can find you, where they can connect with you.
Um, well, I haven't done a show. It's been over 9 years since I've done a show. So I will be posting this to my YouTube channel. And I guess if people are interested in shows like this with me and Kaylin, you could leave a comment or give a thumbs up or a like or just to indicate if this is something that interests you and would be helpful to you moving forward.
Yeah, and then we'll consider doing more if that's the case. So yeah, so your comments and likes and all of that are very much welcome. And we'll put in the show notes, I'll put if you send me your information, I'll put in the show notes for my channel how people can get in touch with you, and I'll send you that information for your channel
Okay.
as well. So, yay, this has been really fun. Oh my gosh, I feel like just even talking about these things means that we're infusing them with our awareness and our energy and the possibilities that become alive as a result of that. It's just so exciting. So I'm
Well,
excited
I
that,
think it's an indication of what you were talking about both things are working together. We're informing the mysteries are informing us. So I think we're showing up as a mouthpiece for what is happening. We're just saying, this is what's happening. So, I think it all works together. And I think to begin to open our eyes to see how things are working together, are woven together, and bringing our awareness, the consciousness, to that there's a wholeness here that is working, and for us to acknowledge that
Yeah.
wholeness.
Yes, and to embrace it and then to embody it. Yeah, because that's what we're here for. I mean, we did choose to be here at this time, as
Yes, we did.
as we like to say, though sometimes we might wonder what in the hell were we thinking, but
That's what I say a lot to myself. What was I thinking?
what was I thinking? I don't think I was thinking. I think I was just responding. I don't know. But but from a higher perspective, maybe from, from some more cosmic aspect of how this is all coming together and playing out, it's like, yeah, we really wanted to be here to help with this transition and be the
Yes,
one.
yes. This is a
Yeah.
major, major, major transition we're in.
Yeah,
So,
and truly, I mean, it's coming up. So I hope we get to do this again soon. And just thank you, everybody, for being here. And
yes, thank you.
that your next month, month and a half, 2 months, 6 months, whatever it is inspired by what we've shared here. So,
Thank you.
hi.
Love to everyone.
Love to all.